Until she learns respect, she can stay in the garage. It's heated. The sound wasn't loud. It wasn't violent. It wasn't even angry. It was the slow roll of a metal garage door closing. Heavy. Final. And in that quiet mechanical hum, my parents chose which child mattered. Lily stood inside that garage holding her small pink suitcase. The wheel was broken, so it tilted awkwardly. She kept trying to straighten it, like if she fixed the suitcase, maybe she could fix the situation too. She was 9 years old, and my mother stood behind her with her arms crossed, speaking in that calm voice she used when she wanted to feel right. She needs to learn respect. The garage is heated. Heated. As if warmth replaced dignity. My father didn't raise his voice either. He adjusted his glasses and said, "It's temporary. Don't dramatize it." Temporary. That word is dangerous. Because temporary things can scar permanently. I should have stopped it. I should have grabbed Lily's hand and walked out. But I didn't. And that's the part that haunts me. 3 months earlier, my life had already been falling apart quietly. My husband didn't cheat. He didn't yell. He didn't explode. He just shut down. One evening he sat across from me at the kitchen table and said, "I'm tired, Anna. I feel like I'm drowning." I thought he meant work. He meant us. Within 2 weeks, he moved into a small apartment across town. No drama. No fight over custody. No screaming match. Just papers and silence. I had started a small design studio from home. It was growing, but slowly. Money was unstable. Rent was high. My savings were thin. And pride is expensive. So when my parents offered their guest room, I accepted. Family helps family, my mother said. But what she meant was, family stays under our rules. We arrived with 3 suitcases, a laptop, and a child trying to pretend she wasn't scared. From the first night, I could feel it. We weren't guests. We were reminders. My sister Rachel and her daughter Emma lived nearby. Emma was perfect in my mother's eyes. Straight A's, piano lessons, soft-spoken, polite. Lily was creative, opinionated, sensitive. To my mother, that translated as difficult. At dinner, my mother would casually say, "Emma got selected for the advanced math group." Then she'd look at Lily. "And what did you do today?" Lily would answer softly, "I finished my drawing." My father would chuckle, "That won't pay for college." Every comment was small, but small things stack. One evening, Lily asked if she could put her drawings on the refrigerator. Emma's artwork already covered half of it. My mother smiled thinly. "We don't want clutter." Clutter. That's what Lily became in that house. Clutter. 2 weeks before the garage night, I overheard something I wish I hadn't. My father was speaking to Rachel in the kitchen. He didn't know I was upstairs. He said, "Anna always makes things harder, and now she brings extra responsibility." Rachel laughed lightly. "Well, at least Emma doesn't compete for attention." Then my father said it. "She's superfluous." Superfluous. Unnecessary. Extra. He wasn't talking about me. He was talking about Lily. I stood frozen at the top of the stairs, gripping the railing. Something inside me cracked that day, but I still didn't leave, because leaving meant admitting failure. And I was already drowning. It happened over a sketchbook. Lily's sketchbook. She guarded it like treasure. Inside were buildings she designed. Houses with big windows. Bridges over rivers. Tree houses balanced perfectly between branches. Emma borrowed it without asking and tore a page accidentally. Lily confronted her. Not rudely, just firmly. "Please don't take it without asking." Emma cried. My mother rushed in like it was an emergency. "What happened?" Emma sniffled. She yelled at me. That was enough. My mother turned to Lily. "You will not speak to your cousin that way in this house." Lily tried to explain. I didn't yell. I just... Enough. That was the moment. The sentence was passed without trial. She can spend the night in the garage. Maybe that will teach gratitude. I laughed nervously, thinking it was a joke. It wasn't. The garage smelled like oil and old cardboard. Yes, it had a small heater mounted on the wall. Yes, there was a fold-out cot. But it wasn't a bedroom. It was a message. You don't belong here. I helped Lily carry her blanket. She didn't cry. That was the worst part. She just asked quietly, "Did I do something bad?" My throat burned. "No, sweetheart." "Then why are we here?" She didn't ask that out loud, but her eyes did. When the garage door closed, the house went silent. Too silent. And that's when something inside me shifted. Not loudly, not dramatically, just quietly, like a decision forming. 3 weeks earlier, I had received an envelope. It was cream-colored, official, from a law firm I didn't recognize. Inside was information about my grandmother Ruth's trust. I assumed everything had already been handled after she passed 2 years ago. My parents told me there was nothing significant left. But this letter said otherwise. The trust had a primary beneficiary, Lily Henderson, my daughter, not Emma, not divided between grandchildren, Lily. And there was a clause. If the minor experienced emotional neglect or instability in primary residence, early activation could be requested. At the time, I didn't think it applied. Now, sitting on my childhood bed while my daughter slept in a garage, I read it again. Slowly, very slowly. The next morning, I didn't argue. I didn't accuse. I made pancakes. I thanked my mother for her patience. She looked satisfied. That's when I understood something important. People who misuse power feel safest when you appear small. So I appeared small. And that afternoon, while Lily was at school, I stepped outside and called the number listed under trustee, Mr. Harlan. He answered calmly, "Yes, I remember your grandmother well." When I explained everything, he didn't interrupt. He just listened. Then he said something that made my heart pound. "Your grandmother was very concerned about favoritism in the family." Favoritism. He knew. She knew. They had anticipated this. He asked for documentation, evidence, statements, photos. And suddenly, I didn't feel powerless anymore. I felt steady, because I didn't need to scream. I just needed to let truth unfold. 3 days later, a formal evaluation notice arrived by certified mail, addressed to my parents. My mother's hands shook as she opened it. "What is this?" she demanded. I looked at the paper calmly. "I'm not sure." But inside, my pulse was strong. For the first time since moving into that house, I wasn't surviving. I was preparing, because they believed we were dependent. They believed we had no options. They believed Lily was extra. What they didn't know was that the future had already been written in her name. And the garage door they closed that night? It didn't trap us. It activated something they would never see coming. The envelope arrived on a Tuesday morning. Certified mail. My mother signed for it. At first, she looked irritated, like it was another bill or some pointless advertisement. Then she saw the law firm name. Her smile faded. She opened it at the kitchen table, while I stood at the sink pretending to rinse a glass that was already clean. Silence stretched across the room. "What is this?" she asked, her voice sharp but slightly unsteady. My father leaned over her shoulder. His jaw tightened. "It says review of living conditions regarding a minor beneficiary." The words hung in the air like smoke. Minor beneficiary. I dried my hands slowly. "Oh," I said softly. "That must be about the trust." The way my mother's head snapped toward me, I will never forget it. What trust? There it was. They didn't know. We sat down. I kept my tone calm, measured. Grandma Ruth created a trust. Lily is the primary beneficiary. My father laughed, but it wasn't a warm laugh. That's impossible. Everything was settled. It wasn't. My mother's lips thinned. How much are we talking about? Not concern. Not confusion. Money. Always money. I'm not sure of the full amount, I said carefully, but it's substantial. Silence again. This time heavier, because something had shifted. For years, my parents positioned themselves as the center of control, the providers, the decision makers, the ones holding the roof over our heads. But suddenly, that balance felt fragile, and they could feel it too. 2 days later, a social evaluator came to the house. She was calm, professional, neutral. She asked Lily simple questions. Where do you sleep? Do you feel safe here? Do you feel treated the same as your cousin? Lily hesitated. She looked at me first. I nodded gently. Tell the truth. She swallowed. Sometimes I feel like I'm in the way. In the way. That sentence hit harder than anything dramatic could have. My mother interrupted. She's sensitive. She misinterprets discipline. The evaluator didn't react. She simply wrote notes. Then she asked to see Lily's sleeping arrangement. The garage door creaked open. The fold-out cot was still there. The thin blanket. The small suitcase in the corner. In daylight, it looked even worse. Not cruel. Just cold. Calculated. That evening, my father confronted me in the hallway. You're making us look bad. His voice wasn't loud. It was controlled anger. The kind he used when he wanted to intimidate without raising his voice. I'm protecting my daughter, I replied. You could have handled this privately. Privately? That word again. Private silence had allowed this to happen. Private tolerance had normalized it. No, I said quietly. It needed to be documented. He stared at me as if I were someone unfamiliar. And in a way, I was. Because fear had slowly been replaced with something steadier. Resolve. A week later, Mr. Harlan called. His voice was calm but firm. The preliminary review supports early partial activation. My heart pounded. What does that mean? It means funds can be released to secure stable independent housing for Lily. Independent housing. My knees felt weak. I sat down. My parents were in the living room watching television. They had no idea the ground beneath them was shifting. How much? I whispered. He told me the number. It wasn't just enough to move out. It was enough to breathe. For the first time in months, I exhaled fully. We were asked to attend a formal meeting at the law office. My parents insisted on coming. They believed they were entitled to oversight. After all, they considered themselves the responsible adults. We sat around a polished wooden table. Mr. Harlan placed documents neatly in front of us. Due to documented emotional instability in the minor's residence, he began, the trust will be partially activated. My mother leaned forward. This is ridiculous. We provided shelter. Mr. Harlan's expression did not change. Shelter does not equal stability. The room felt smaller, hotter. Then he said the amount aloud. My father inhaled sharply. That money was part of our inheritance structure, he protested. Mr. Harlan corrected him gently. No, it was designated solely for Lily Henderson. Solely. Not shared. Not divided. Lily. In that moment, I saw something rare on my parents' faces. Not anger. Not pride. Fear. Because the power dynamic had reversed. They had believed we were dependent. That we needed them. That we were temporary. But now, legally and financially, Lily was more secure than they had expected. And they hadn't known. My mother's voice softened. Anna, we were just trying to help. Help doesn't humiliate. Help doesn't isolate. Help doesn't send a child to sleep beside lawn equipment. I didn't argue. I didn't need to. The truth was already sitting in front of them in black ink. 2 weeks later, we packed our suitcases again. This time, not in defeat. In decision. Lily folded her clothes carefully. Are we in trouble? She asked. No, I told her. We're moving forward. We left without shouting. Without dramatic goodbyes. My parents stood at the doorway. Confused. Polite. Uncertain. They tried to say it was a misunderstanding. That things had escalated unnecessarily. But sometimes escalation is simply exposure. And exposure feels uncomfortable to those who benefited from silence. Our townhouse wasn't large, but it was bright. White walls. Big windows. Quiet neighborhood. Lily walked into her new bedroom slowly. She touched the walls like they were fragile. Is this really mine? Yes. No casa en comparisons. No garaje. No conditions. That night, she taped her drawings to the wall. All of them. No one called it clutter. She slept with the door open. Not because she was afraid. Because she felt safe. My mother called repeatedly. We didn't mean it that way. You misunderstood. You're overreacting. But here's the thing about boundaries. Once you build them, people who benefited from crossing them will call you dramatic. I answered politely, briefly, and eventually less often, because the real goal wasn't revenge. It was protection. Years from now, they will likely tell the story differently. They will say they offered support. They will say I was sensitive. They will say Lily was difficult. But they will never say the full truth. They will never say, we underestimated her. They didn't know the trust existed. They didn't know the evaluation clause. They didn't know that the garage door they closed that night would close something else too. Their control. Their narrative. Their authority. And this was only the beginning. Because money changes stability, but it doesn't heal memory. And one day, when Lily is older, she will decide what forgiveness looks like. 10 years pass quietly, not dramatically, not with headlines, but with steady growth. Lily didn't just grow taller. She grew stronger in ways that are harder to measure. She kept drawing. Except now, her drawings became blueprints. She studied architecture. She talked about balance, structure, load-bearing walls. She loved the idea that something could look delicate, but hold incredible weight. I always found that ironic, because that was her. Delicate looking, unbreakable underneath. One evening, as she spread out her final year project across the dining table, she said something that made my breath catch. Mom, do you think a house remembers what happened inside it? I looked at her carefully. What do you mean? She traced a line across the blueprint. Like, if something bad happened in a room, does the room keep it? I didn't answer immediately, because I knew she wasn't talking about architecture. She was talking about the garage. A month later, an invitation arrived. My parents were hosting a family gathering. Rachel and Emma would be there. So would distant relatives. It was the first large event since we moved out. Lily stared at the card quietly. Do we have to go? She asked. No, I said honestly. We don't. She thought for a moment. I want to. That surprised me. Why? She folded the card carefully. Because I don't want them to think I'm still that kid. There it was. Not anger. Not revenge. Just clarity. So we went. Walking into that house again felt strange. The walls were the same. The furniture was the same. Even the refrigerator still displayed Emma's old piano certificates. But something had changed. Us. My parents greeted us politely. Measured smiles. Careful tone. They no longer spoke to Lily like she was a burden. They spoke to her like she was an asset. Architecture, right? My father said. Very impressive. Lily nodded. Yes. No extra words. No serinking. Emma approached awkwardly. I heard about your scholarship. That's amazing. Lily smiled gently. Thank you. No bitternis. No sarcasm. Just calm. That calm unsettled them more than anger ever would have. At some point during the evening, Lily stepped outside. I followed her. She was standing in front of the garage. The same door. Same metal ridges. Same handle. She reached out and touched it lightly. Do you remember? She asked. Ido. She inhaled slowly. I used to think I did something wrong that night. My chest tightened. You didn't. She nodded. I know that now. Then she said something I wasn't prepared for. Grandma knew, didn't she? I froze. Yes. Lily smiled softly. She saw it. She did. Lily stepped back from the garage. I don't hate them. That sentence felt heavier than any accusation. I just don't need them. And in that moment, I realized something profound. The opposite of dependence isn't revenge. It's independence. Later that evening, my father tapped his glass to get attention. He liked speeches. He liked control. I'd like to say how proud we are of our granddaughter Lily, he began. Granddaughter. Now she was proudly his. The room applauded lightly. Lily stood still beside me. Then she surprised everyone. She stepped forward. May I say something? My father hesitated, but handed her the glass. She didn't speak loudly. She didn't accuse. She simply said, when I was 9, I thought being sent to sleep in the garage meant I didn't belong. It took me years to understand something important. Sometimes being pushed out shows you exactly where you need to build your own door. The room went silent. She continued, I'm grateful for that lesson, because now I design spaces where no child feels like an afterthought. No anger, no blame, just truth. My mother's face paled. Emma looked down, and my father had no speech ready for that. After guests began leaving, my mother approached Lily privately. We never meant to hurt you, she said. Lily nodded politely. I believe that. But we were under stress. Lily didn't argue. She didn't comfort. She simply said, it still happened. There was no cruelty in her voice, just reality. And sometimes reality is the strongest form of justice. On the drive home, the city lights reflected on the windshield. Lily leaned back in her seat. I used to think the trust saved us, she said. Ich glänzte her. What do you think now? I think Grandma saved me long before the money did. That was true. The trust gave us stability, but belief gave her identity, and identity cannot be taken away. Looking back now, I understand something clearly. The trust didn't activate the day the papers were signed. It activated the night the garage door closed. Because that was the night I stopped accepting small humiliations as normal. That was the night Lily learned she wasn't superfluous. That was the night control quietly shifted. My parents still tell their version of events. They speak of misunderstandings, of discipline, of family tension. But Lily doesn't argue. She builds. She designs. She creates spaces where no one is sent outside. And that is the most powerful response of all. Because true revenge isn't destruction. It's construction. True justice isn't loud. It's steady. And the child they once treated as extra? She became the foundation. 2 years after that family gathering, Lily received an email that made her freeze. She had been selected to present her final architectural thesis at a national urban development forum. It wasn't a small student showcase. It was a serious event. Real investors, real city planners, real journalists. Her project was titled Invisible Rooms. When I asked her what it meant, she smiled softly. It's about the spaces people overlook, she said. Garages, basements, attics, places that are technically part of the house, but emotionally separated. I felt my chest tighten. She continued, what if those spaces were redesigned intentionally? What if no room in a home felt like punishment? She never said it directly, but I knew. The garage had never left her. She had simply rebuilt it in her own way. The day of the forum arrived. Large hall, clean lighting, quiet anticipation. Lily stood backstage holding her presentation notes. Her hands were steady. Mine weren't. As guests began taking their seats, I noticed 2 familiar figures enter the hall. My parents. I hadn't invited them. Lily hadn't either. But they were there. My father looked smaller somehow. Slower. My mother carried herself carefully, as if unsure where she stood in the room. They didn't approach us. They simply sat in the back row, watching. When Lily stepped onto the stage, the room quieted. She didn't rush. She didn't dramatize. She simply spoke. My research focuses on transitional spaces in domestic architecture, she began. Areas that are structurally attached but emotionally detached. Slides appeared on the screen. Images of garages redesigned into studios. Basements turned into bright bedrooms. Attics converted into creative lofts. Then she said something that made the air shift. As children, we often internalize space as value. The larger the room, the greater the belonging. But what happens when a child is placed in a space meant for storage? Silence. Not uncomfortable, just heavy. I design homes where no space feels like overflow. Overflow. A softer word, but powerful. She ended simply. Architecture can either isolate or integrate. I choose integration. The applause wasn't explosive. It was deep, respectful, long. I glanced toward the back row. My mother was wiping her eyes. My father didn't clap at first. Then slowly he did. After the event, people surrounded Lily. Compliments, business cards, offers. A city developer approached her about collaborating on affordable housing projects. This wasn't symbolic success. It was real. As the crowd thinned, my parents walked toward us. Slowly, carefully. My father spoke first. That was impressive. He struggled with the word. Lily nodded. Thank you. There was a pause. The kind that decides whether a conversation becomes healing or defensive. My mother finally said it. We didn't realize. 3 words. Simple, but loaded. Lily didn't rescue them from their discomfort. She didn't rush to ease it. She simply replied, I know. Not forgiving. Not condemning. Just acknowledging. Later that evening, my father asked if he could speak to Lily alone. I hesitated. She didn't. I'll be okay, Mom. They stepped aside into a quiet corner of the lobby. I watched from a distance. My father stood straighter than usual, but his hands were clasped tightly behind his back, a nervous habit from his younger years. I was raised to believe discipline builds strength, he said. Lily listened. I thought discomfort made people tougher. She answered gently. There's a difference between discomfort and exclusion. He inhaled slowly. I see that now. She nodded. I hope so. There was no dramatic hug. No tears. Just a shift. And sometimes that's enough. On the drive home, Lily was quiet. Are you okay? I asked. Yes. She looked out the window at the passing streetlights. I don't want them to feel destroyed. That word struck me. Destroyed. No one was destroyed, I said. They just lost control. She smiled faintly. I think that's harder. She was right. Losing control feels like loss of identity to people who built themselves on authority. And my parents had built their identity on being necessary. The providers. The decision makers. The ones who held the house keys. But now, they were visitors in her world, not gatekeepers. Months later, Lily's project gained traction. An article featured her work. The headline read, Designing Dignity, Rethinking Forgotten Spaces. She was invited to consult on a youth housing initiative. When she signed her first professional contract, she looked at me and said, Grandma would have liked this. Yes, I replied softly. She would. The trust funds had been wisely invested over the years. They were still there, steady, supportive, silent. But the real wealth was something else. Confidence, clarity, choice. A year later, my parents decided to sell their house. It was too large now, too quiet. They asked if we wanted to walk through it one last time. Lily agreed. We stepped inside. The refrigerator was bare. The walls empty. The house looked smaller without authority filling it. Lily walked to the garage. She opened the door herself this time. Sunlight streamed in. The space looked ordinary, neutral, just concrete and shelves. She turned to my father. You know, she said calmly, it wasn't the garage that hurt. He looked confused. It was the message. He nodded slowly. I understand. She stepped back into the light. And I don't carry it anymore. And just like that, she didn't. Looking back now, I understand something clearly. Money gave us stability, but dignity gave us power. The trust was important. It created options. It removed dependence. But the true activation wasn't financial. It was emotional. It was the moment Lily realized she wasn't extra. She wasn't clutter. She wasn't superfluous. She was foundation. And here's what I've learned. When someone pushes you into the margins, they may unknowingly push you toward your purpose. When someone underestimates you, they reveal their own limitation. And when a door closes, even a garage door, it may not be punishment. It may be preparation. Because the child who once slept beside cardboard boxes grew up to design spaces where no child ever feels stored away. And that is the quietest, strongest form of justice. 3 years after the forum presentation, Lily bought her first property. Not a mansion, not a flashy penthouse, a modest corner lot in a growing neighborhood. But there was one detail that made me pause when I saw the blueprint. It had no garage. Instead, the space traditionally reserved for storage had been replaced with something else. A sunlit studio room. Large windows. Low shelves. Wide open floor. When I asked her why, she smiled. I didn't want the house to have a space that feels like overflow. Overflow. The word that had once described her. Now redesigned. Repurposed. Reclaimed. When construction was complete, Lily decided to host a small housewarming dinner. She invited close friends, a few colleagues, and after a long pause while writing the list, she added 2 names. My parents. I didn't ask her why. She didn't explain. The evening arrived. The house was warm, bright, intentional. Every corner felt thought out. Nothing accidental. My parents arrived early. They stood at the entrance quietly, taking everything in. My father ran his hand along the wall near the studio room. No garage, he asked. Lily shook her head gently. No. He nodded slowly. I see. And for the first time, I believed he actually did. Later that night, Lily guided guests into the sunlit studio space. On one wall, framed behind glass, was something unexpected. Her childhood sketchbook. The one Emma had torn. The missing page had been carefully restored. Underneath it, a small plaque read, "No space is insignificant." My mother stood very still in front of it. Her eyes filled. I didn't know, she whispered. Lily answered calmly. You didn't ask. The words weren't cruel. They were honest. And honesty can feel sharper than accusation. Near the end of the evening, after guests began leaving, my mother approached Lily privately. I owe you something, she said. Lily listened. I was raised to value obedience over emotion. I thought structure mattered more than softness. She paused, but I confused control with care. The admission hung in the air. For years, my mother had never admitted fault, never stepped down from authority, but age, distance, and perspective had softened something in her. Lily didn't rush to forgive. She didn't rush to comfort. She simply said, I needed protection, not correction. My mother nodded slowly. I understand that now. And for once, I believed she meant it. When my parents left that night, they didn't walk like owners. They walked like guests. Not unwelcome, just not central. And that is the difference. They no longer defined the space. They no longer controlled the narrative. They were part of Lily's world, not rulers of it. On the porch, my father turned back and said something simple. You built something strong. Lily answered gently. I learned from experience. He nodded. And this time it wasn't pride. It was humility. That night, after everyone had gone home, Lily and I sat in the studio room. Moonlight filtered through the windows. Quiet. Peaceful. I used to think revenge meant making them feel small, Lily said softly. I looked at her. What do you think now? I think revenge would have tied me to that garage forever. She leaned back in her chair. But building something better? That sets me free. She was right. Revenge traps you in the moment of pain. Growth releases you from it. The trust money had long been invested wisely. It had paid for education, for stability, for opportunity. But its real purpose wasn't wealth. It was interruption. It interrupted a cycle. It prevented dependency from becoming identity. It gave us time to breathe. And in that breathing space, Lily discovered who she was. My grandmother must have known something. She must have seen the cracks in our family long before they widened. She didn't leave Lily money. She left her leverage. And sometimes, leverage is love in disguise. A month after the housewarming, Lily did something unexpected. She wrote a letter. Not to her grandparents. Not to investors. To her younger self. She read it to me one evening. It said, You were not extra. You were not clutter. You were not a burden. You were placed in the wrong room, that's all. And one day, you will design your own. I couldn't speak for a moment. Because that letter wasn't just for her. It was for every child who ever felt misplaced. Now, when I think about that garage door closing years ago, I no longer feel anger. I feel clarity. It wasn't the worst night of our lives. It was the turning point. Because that was the moment I stopped waiting for approval. That was the moment Lily began defining her worth internally. And here is the truth no one tells you. The people who underestimate you often reveal more about their own fear than your value. The ones who push you into corners may unknowingly show you where the light enters. And sometimes, the child placed in the smallest room grows up to build the largest doors. Justice doesn't always arrive with noise. Sometimes it arrives with a blueprint. And sometimes, it builds a house with no garage.